and I went on with my life almost dismissing a moment that I now perceive as deeply mystical. This complete union with this ocean out of which all life on Earth arose. And, each birthing is a reenactment of that tale as we sit in our mother's wombs, surrounded by, ancient seas of amniotic fluid. And there was this great mother ocean, and I felt completely held by her. But that was that first recognition for me, in a way, that we humans are simply the earth in human form.
Wherever you are in the world right now, welcome back to Enthusiastically Spiritual. I'm your host, Teresa. How does Live Your Wild Soul Story feel to you? I don't know about you, but it feels super juicy, and I am so excited today because my guest today is an adventurous spirit named Mary Reynolds Thompson, who has roamed the farthest reaches of the planet from the heights of the Himalayas to the tip of Tierra del Fuego, deepening her connection to nature. As a young girl, she ran free in the hills of Positano in southern Italy. She slept in caves and fished with locals at night to catch squid. Her favorite mode of transportation was a pig called Romana. She believes that having a deeper connection to nature can help heal personal and cultural wounds. She believes that by engaging with nature's archetypes and metaphors, women can find their way back to their most authentic, natural, and empowered selves. And in doing so, they'll find the courage to step up, speak out, and stand up for this precious earth. Welcome, Mary.
Oh, great to be with you, Teresa.
It is absolute pleasure. And so how about that? Wow. Live your wild soul story. When I saw that on your website, I was like, oh, everything in me just vibrated. I'm like, yes, 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 Mary, I want to be on board.
Yeah, there's something about that word wild, isn't there? That there's such a permission and a freedom in it. And I think, though I've worked with both men and women throughout my life, that for many women, we have really been tamed and shamed and in some ways overly domesticated and silenced. And there's this sense when we think about the wild soul that this sort of door opens up, this sense of the moreness of who we are and the possibilities that might be available to us if we sort of escaped the cage of this structure that keeps us in many ways living much smaller lives than we know we're capable of.
And I know too, like in the realm of spirituality and metaphysics and energy, that a lot more women show up than men. And it's great now because there are some more men starting to, dive in, like my husband's one and there's other ones out there, but majority of the percentage of people that do it are women. And so, yes, tapping into that wild soul aspect of us, I just feel like we're ready, like game on, right, Mary?
I think we are ready. And I think one of the things that for me really characterizes the wild soul, it's that part of us that is deeply related to the creativity, the diversity, the boldness and beauty of the natural world. So we know that really all humans suffer a soul wound. And that soul wound is this traumatic separation from the earth. This happened, 18th century age of enlightenment, where we really began to uproot ourselves from our natural connection to the earth and begin to think of ourselves as separate and superior beings. And we've become so accustomed to that kind of thinking, we actually don't realize what a deep soul wound that is because we don't know what we're missing. But if you think about it, for most of human history, this deep connection to the places in which we live, to the stars above us, to the rhythms of nature, to the soil beneath our feet, to the trees that were our companions, these all gave us a sense of belonging and a sense of meaning in our life. And we have kind of lost that thread. So part of reclaiming our wild souls is to begin to weave ourselves back into this deep connection with the earth.
And I know for yourself, you say that nature was key in your own recovery and moving into what you're doing now. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about that.
Be happy to. This year, I will celebrate 40 years of sobriety,
Mm.
which is no small thing. And I was 27 years old when I got sober, so you can do the math. And I was a complete wreck. I was just to alcoholism born. It's in my DNA, in my family roots. The minute I met alcohol, there was this chemical explosion and I was off and running. But at 27, things had gotten so bad and I hated myself so much that I had this moment where I knew I had to stop drinking. But I was terrified. I didn't know how to live without alcohol. I was detoxing, I was shaking, but I was also walking the bluffs of the Marin Headlands where I live now on a very stormy day, and the Pacific below me was churning and wild. And this thought came to me that this ocean was reflecting my inner turmoil, but I knew that the ocean was incredibly strong. Yeah, it was churned up, it was slapping against the rocks, but it was strong. And this thought entered my mind. Maybe I could be really churned up and in turmoil, but strong too. And at that moment, I tasted salty water in my mouth, and I didn't know if it was the ocean spray or my own tears. And I felt completely at one with that body of water. And this thought came to me, I can do this. I'm not going to have to drink again. And I haven't. So it was really, and I went on with my life almost dismissing a moment that I now perceive as deeply mystical. This complete union with this ocean out of which all life on earth arose. And, each birthing is a reenactment of that tale as we sit in our mother's wombs, surrounded by, ancient seas of amniotic fluid. And there was this great mother ocean, and I felt completely held by her. And that just has I've forgotten it, and then it comes back and it comes back. But that was that first recognition for me, in a way, that we humans are simply the earth in human form. We are simply an expression of this great and beloved body of being, of Gaia, as some people call her.
And how beautiful it is. And I've recognized that, especially like in storms and like you're saying, even like this, the scenery around me, how it has mimicked me and it has mimicked where I'm at inside. And I love the fact that you brought up this memory, well, this, the alcoholism that came through the strands. Cause I have the same thing. My father, my grandfather, both grandmothers. I mean, it's like, yeah, if I didn't come in going, hello, you can either be an alcoholic or it's in me. So,
Right.
and it's in a lot of people because this is something that a lot of people work with, and it's a challenging thing to break free of. But like connecting with the ocean and having that really mirror back that, the turmoil and everything churning, and it was time for a change. And I mean, that's so beautiful, Mary. I mean, I just love that metaphor and not a metaphor, but the mirroring. It's, I guess the sea was a metaphor, but
It was a metaphor, and
Mhm.
it was a mirroring, and it was an archetype, because the ocean is also an archetype. There's a wonderful quote by Lawrence Durrell. He says, each landscape asks the same question. I'm watching myself in you. Are you watching yourself in me? And that's that mirroring that you're talking about. It's that incredible way in which we see ourselves in nature. But then there's this other question: when nature reflects back on us, what is she seeing? It's a really interesting question. But yes, we are mirrored and shaped by the landscapes that we live in.
So that's a good way to segue into your book, A Wild Soul Woman, 5 Earth Archetypes to Unleash Your Full Feminine Power. And the 5 archetypes are desert, forest, ocean, river, mountain, and grassland. So when I saw those, Mary, I was like, there's different times in my life when I'm drawn to different ones, or depending on how I feel. And so I'm excited to dive into these different archetypes and what they bring forth as far as our feminine power and how we can unleash that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because we're drawn to different ones at different times of our lives. I mean, I would say that for years I was a mountain woman, give me a challenge. Oh, baby, I'm just gonna go do it. Can't do that so much anymore. So I'm softening more into this grassland woman and community and connection. But these are archetypes. I actually wrote about them in an earlier book called Reclaiming the Wild Soul, which was for both men and women. But it was really interesting because I was asked to teach a course through this incredible eco-feminine organization called Tree Sisters. And I began to think about, well, how do these archetypes exhibit in women particularly? Is there anything? I mean, and how can we learn and grow from them in a way that is very particular to our feminine journey? And the first thing I would say is it's really hard to heal the wounds of who we are within the system that created the wounds. So we're always constantly trying to heal ourselves within a system that is patriarchal, top down, all too willing to shame and blame the feminine, right? So these archetypes, which morphed from desert to desert woman, forest to forest woman, and on, in this work that I was doing with Tree Sisters, really gives us a way of entering a mythic realm that lives within us as well as outside of us, that is away and beyond and far more ancient and wise and knowledgeable than this very thin veneer of patriarchy, which we've all been kind of like cement over the grass, has been plonked on top of us. So it gives us these incredibly powerful metaphors and meaning-making images to deal with. So, for example, just want to give one example, if I may. So we begin with Desert Woman, which is often people say to me, well, do I really have to go right to the desert? could we go maybe to a sunny meadow first? No. So one of the things, if you think about the desert and you think about this archetype, there is a stillness and an emptiness and a silence. So a desert doesn't overdo. A desert does what it needs ingeniously to get by and survive on very little. And oftentimes when we're starting a journey of transformation, we actually have to separate from community because we are, particularly as women, often very influenced by everything and everyone around us, and also always thinking of what we can do for others. And the desert is an invitation to say, no, what is it that you really need? What is it that you need to shed? Who do you really need to be in your essential self to begin to take this journey? And you can't cross a desert laden with baggage. Deserts are strewn with things that didn't make it across, right? So what do you need to lay down right now to take this journey? It'll be different for everybody, but it'll be something. So when you have that kind of language, do you see just in the speaking and it's a different way that we can begin to give voice to our interiority, because it's very hard. People say, how do you feel? What's going on? And we go, oh, fine. We don't have a language to describe the soul journey. And this is a way that we really begin weaving awakening these archetypes. We begin to find a language that can talk about the very deepest aspects of the soul.
I think the interesting part about these two is that, like, where am I guided to go at this moment? Like, I'm sure that might be part of what, people read your book and be like, well, I'm really guided to, like you said, the mountains. I myself, I grew up in Southern California, so I had the mountain ranges and I also had the ocean, but I love the mountains. Oh, it's funny. I also had the desert there too, but there's a lot right there in the Southern California
There
area.
is. It's one of the reasons I love living in California. All the landscapes are here.
Without a doubt. Like, yeah, within like, an hour or so, you can get a lot of different landscapes. But
Mhm.
lately I've been guided to the ocean. And the mountains are still great, but the ocean just calls me so much, Mary. The ocean and also rivers, being on rivers and lakes. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about oceans and rivers and water.
Yeah, I'd love to. So for me, these are really the landscapes of feeling, of longing, of yearning. And we think about our modern culture, and often our deepest longings have been damned, spelt both ways, right? Is we've literally not allowed them. So part of awakening to this ocean and river woman is opening the floodgates of your heart. It's that real space where you go, what is it I long for in my deepest being? And I'm not talking about the superficial desires, though they live there too. We all have them, and not to make them wrong. But when you really are aligned with that energy of ocean and river, there is that deep, deep knowing of where your heart wants to lead you in life. So it's following, it's a release, it's a surrender, it's letting go to some extent of the control, which of course some of us really love.
Yeah, wait, people, my listeners can't see, but I've got all fingers pointing to me.
Right. And me, we're pointing right to.
All 10, right, right, Mary?
But it's to surrendering to what naturally and passionately wants to come through you. And that's one of the hardest challenges of the world. So I don't know if that resonates with you at all and where you are in your life, but definitely that's an aspect.
Absolutely, it is. Yeah, it resonates 100% with me, especially in the heart area. And I'm so sensitive as a soul that I pick up and can feel what the collective's feeling. And we're all going through this big heart shift right now and, different energies going on. So, yeah, definitely that
Mhm.
resonates big time. So, I want to tap a little bit into nature. And so, obviously, the sea, and when you had the experience when you were younger and you needed to, move on with and move into recovery, but the nature has been shifted so much the last couple years with I want to mention COVID and how the whole world stopped and nature started replenishing places that were like going, were looking bad and have, a lot of things going on really revived in some ways. So how has that, did you notice that too? And like what you go through as far as, with this kind of work and how nature at that point was just shifting so much?
Yeah, it was really interesting. I was running a lot of online courses during COVID about connecting to nature, and people were talking about how, number one, they were really waking up to their backyards, wherever they were, even in cities, the smallest tree, bird, everything, they were beginning to notice. And of course, we had a lot less noise pollution, a huge thing. So we could actually hear nature speaking to us in a way that we hadn't before. Um, but I think what it really showed us was if we can restore our relationship to the natural world, if we can see it not as a resource, but as a relative, as kin, as part of this community, this earth community, where every being, whether it be, a wild iris or, a boy learning math in school, each has its own particular part to play, then we can begin to restore nature without having to have something like COVID shut us all down and have us actually realize how important public parks are, public space, places where people can resource some wild time and feel themselves part of something. So COVID definitely, I think, awoke in people an appreciation and a deeper awareness for where they were and their environment around them. what's hard about the world we live in is that we move on so quickly.
Mm.
You know, we don't take time to integrate the lessons. We're just on to the next thing. And I already see that, and I see it in myself to some extent. And it's like there was a slowing down. And I think soul time is different than chronological modern time. And we are so pushed and encouraged to be ever moving and driven forward to the next goal and the next goal. And honestly, so many people changed their lives as a result of COVID because they actually had time to reflect on what was important to them, what mattered. I just hope that we don't forget some of these lessons.
I absolutely hear you, Mary. And as we know, if we do forget some, I think we were in such a dire strait, though, and state at that moment that unfortunately that had to come in and happen. And I hope that we, like you say, I hope we did learn something on a soul level that we can move forward in a different light and not have to be so dramatic. But in looking at history, there's always been, the Spanish flu, the bubonic plague. These are big, keys. What was there? The Hong Kong flu. There was all kinds of things that have moved through to shift the collective at the time those times. And I too, though, hope in my heart that we are at a different space. And I feel that in a lot of the people I interview and a lot of the people I go out and meet at metaphysical fairs and exposes and things, that there is a lot of shifting and there's a lot of people who are waking up and who are ready for like the work you're doing and that
I
deeper
think,
connection.
yeah, I think that that's really true. I think there absolutely is. I like to envision it as the grass coming back. You just see it everywhere. There are these threads and sprigs of new vital life that and I think young people are just leading the way. They're rocking it in terms of how they're standing up to the powers that be and what they're naming of what we need to have this be a world that works for everybody and every being. Yeah.
Absolutely. It so excites me to know that that generation, even though they're having their challenges like we all have, right? We all have to go through all those, the teens and the 20s and beyond. But boy, there are some really courageous and amazing souls coming forth going, yes, we can change, we can, do this and that, especially around nature.
Absolutely.
It's so
Absolutely.
exciting. It's so
I'm in
exciting,
awe of
Mary.
them, really, that they are so articulate. I mean, we Greta Thunberg, but there are so many more. And and young Indigenous women who are on the front lines of climate change initiatives, and this ability to be so fierce and so clear and so strong. I'm like, yeah,
That is that wild woman,
it
wild soul
is.
woman, right?
It is. It totally is. And when you know in your heart that you have, in a way, the earth behind you, I talk about these archetypes. They're also our ancestors because we emerged out of them. And so when you realize that really you have all of this creativity, all of this strength, all of this majesty behind you, you can be bolder. You can speak more boldly. You can have bolder visions because, you're not speaking from this small place, but from this really, powerful big place.
And that's what I was excited about having you on today, Mary, because a lot of people come on, they share about energy or channeling or spirit. And even though I'm about mind, body, and spirit, but being about the land and being about the planet, which is also an energy being, which is also a spiritual aspect of us, right? A mirror.
Yeah.
And having you come on and really share and showcase this aspect of our own healing and how we can take it to a different level and really understand more about who we are as a soul and how to tap into the beautiful archetypes that you've brought forth and really begin healing at this level.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's really interesting when we awaken to the fact that our spirituality, our creativity, and our psychology are shaped by the fact that we arose out of the earth. There's a wonderful cultural theologian passed a few years ago called Thomas Berry. He wrote The Dream of the Earth. And he said, who would we be if we'd emerged from the moon, this desolate gray landscape? Even our concept of the divine would be different, that there is something really deeply important in recognizing that our humanity is shaped from the fact that we awoke to self-reflective human consciousness about 200,000 years ago during the Cenozoic period where life was burgeoning. And we awoke to see a world in which we could experience awe and joy and beauty and wonder and fear and terror and all of those things too. But when you know that and you think about the gift that this earth has been to us and how important it is to how we show up in the world, then you begin to think, but if we diminish and destroy the earth, who do we become? If that is a primary relationship, if the earth shapes us and inspires us on all these different levels, and we go about destroying it, then who are we? Who are we left to be? And I think that's a huge other question, perhaps for another conversation.
Right.
But I think it's a question to sit with. I mean, if you despoil everything, fill it with filth, cut it down, pollute it, abuse it, exploit it, it does beg the question, who are we becoming?
Right. And where are we at, right? And that's kind of back to the things that happen on the planet, like COVID or other disasters and different things that occur, in order for us to recognize that bigger picture, like you're saying. And oftentimes lately too, I've even been focused on like the awe of this, of knowing that how far we are from the sun, and how we're at like the perfect place for earth to grow, for the light to come on. And that's, I mean, like, it's amazing. And that's of course a bigger picture, but it's these little things like that, which aren't so little, that make me go, my God, this is a miracle. It's a miracle we're here. It's a miracle we're all going through this, no matter what the dimension is, as far as, is it positive, is it negative, is it black or white? But Mother Nature is definitely mirroring to us what we're going through. And so I think back to, like, think about like the dinosaurs, and when the meteor hit and everything was on fire and destroyed, and a lot of them left and some stayed. But that was a time too where the earth was mimicking kind of like, I guess, the evolution of what was going on. So it's so interesting. I mean, we could obviously, like I said, dive into deeper into we could do a whole other podcast on the evolution of the planet, but but
We
really
could.
we're about the Earth archetypes. But it does come back to the Earth archetypes, because this is all about the beautiful earth we live on, right, Mary?
It is, I mean, one of the things that I talk about, like, for example, in Forest Woman, is, when you think about a forest, it's such an invitation into mystery. If you step into a forest and, some trails, you can't even see them. It's threadbare and you don't know quite where you're going, and you can sort of spiral around and get lost in things. And that is such an invitation into the depths of our imagination and our creativity. And so not only does the forest supply oxygen and store carbon dioxide, not only on a very physical level is this forest helping us as humans to live, but she is also showing us a way of being. And we live, for example, in a world that wants to know and have answers immediately, like shine the light of consciousness onto everything. And it denies the darkness. And yet over 95% of the universe is dark energy or matter. Darkness is part of our inheritance, and the forest, the very depth of the forest, shows us that. So when we destroy the forest, we're just destroying another place that can serve our imaginations in a way that deepens our creativity. A clear-cut forest is a very horrible thing to see. And when we clear cut our children's creativity, when we tell them not to dream, not to, you just have to know this kind of knowledge, the rational, logical, not the spirit knowledge, not the dream knowledge, not the other, you can just see the parallels. What we do to the earth, we do to ourselves. What we do to the earth, we do to ourselves. And that, I think, is really the bottom line of my message. And what we do to ourselves, we do to the earth. So if we start reforesting our imaginations, that also, if you really get that we're all connected, that we're all part of the web of the life, that any part of the web that affects a change affects the whole. And that's why when sometimes we look at all these things that are going on and we think, oh, it's too immense and I can't do it, we don't understand that, a butterfly wing on one side of the world can cause a hurricane on the other side. We haven't got that yet. But when we understand that, every action has the possibility to change the web in positive ways.
It's interesting because I was thinking about that recently, about how we're all interacting. And I was saying to my husband, like, honestly, it's actually a miracle too, that like so many of us are even on the planet with all of that, Mary, because, being sensitive energy beings, feeling, sensing, exploring, but it's like, and all those things that go on that are on the other end of the spectrum. Yet we're here because we're here to learn and grow. And we're obviously on a mission, and we love this place. I mean, this is a beautiful, beautiful place.
Yeah, it's interesting, when you talked about COVID, and one of the things that came out of that was people saying, well, if we humans weren't here, nature would be better off, right? And to some extent, that's absolutely true. And a lot of beings would rebound if we took ourselves out of the picture. But back to this evolution again, it took 13.8 billion years to bring about this human consciousness. Mm-hmm. And we have the capacity to actually reflect upon, give praise to, celebrate, articulate this wonder of life. And if we saw ourselves not as exploiters and extractors and these dominating powers, but really here to participate in the wonder that we are surrounded by, the miracle that you talked about, then we might begin to see how necessary we are. I mean, the earth without humans would thrive on one level, but it would really miss out on another level. Mm-hmm. And so part of the work I do is helping people to give voice to that love and connection and sense of meaning that comes through this primary relationship with the natural world.
So let's talk about some of the services you do offer, Mary, because you obviously have this beautiful book and your first book also, but share with the listeners what other services and opportunities they have that they can work with you or gather your information to help them on their journey.
Yes, so lots of ways. If you go to my website, which I'm sure will be linked somewhere, you'll find, the workshops, and I have some what they call evergreens, that are sitting there, but also I do in-person and online workshops, everything from the wild scribe to a wild soul woman based on my book, to writing from Earth's landscapes, to, writing things around the solstice and all kinds of nature things. I would say primarily, as I'm a poetry therapist, that poetry, language, archetype, metaphor is sort of ingrained into everything I do. But yeah, just go find me out there, and anything I'm up to will be on my website. So I'm excited, and I've got a whole load of new things that are about to get posted on there. So stay tuned, as they say.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mary, for coming on today and sharing your 5 archetypes and your beautiful, beautiful essence and energy. I appreciate you so much. Well, I don't know about you guys, but I love that episode. So big thanks to Mary for coming on today and sharing from her new book, A Wild Soul Woman, 5 Earth Archetypes to Unleash Your Full Feminine Power. So thanks to all of you guys for listening in to another episode of Enthusiastically Spiritual. I absolutely thank you so much for wherever you're at in the world. I'm sending a little bit of love back to you. And until next week, if you've not subscribed, please make sure that you do so you don't miss any upcoming episodes released every Tuesday. Also, please feel free to share freely with your friends and family this podcast, this episode, or any other ones that you may have watched or listened to and enjoyed. And until next week, just remember that life is too short to not be enthusiastic about your unique journey.